Hi and welcome back to my channel, and in this video I'm going to be talking about how to pay yourself from your CIC. Really important video. I get asked this a lot. How do you pay yourself if you are working on your CIC projects? So I'm going to be talking about three different ways, your three different options you've got to pay yourself from your CIC. This is a really important video because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of people that will tell you you only have one way to pay yourself from your CIC, which is PAYE. This is not true, but there are a lot of factors that you will need to consider. I'm also going to cover in this video a few different tips that I've got to reduce your tax bill. So this is a really important video for anyone who is working on a CIC project. So before I get into that, I just want to say, please hit the subscribe button on this channel for everything to do with community interest companies. If you watch this video and you want to know more and you want to have me look at your situation and advise what's best for you, then do book a phone call with me. You can do that over on your website. That phone call will probably save you loads of money, so it's well worth it. So if you want to do that, go ahead. Also, if you want to find out about setting up a CIC, I've got lots of packages over on my website, lots of support there. So that aside, let's get into it. So I'm going to cover the three different ways you've got to pay yourself from your CIC. So this is when your CIC has gained grant funding money or some other income. It's got income in the CIC bank account. You are doing work on your CIC projects. Maybe you're a project manager, maybe you're doing some facilitating, maybe you're doing admin work. You cannot, to be clear, be paid as a director. A director job is unpaid. That is not paid, not allowed shares, not allowed dividends. So that's important first of all. So, but if you are employed, even if you are a director, but you're doing work on the project, so say you're a project manager, say you've got 40,000 in a year, and you think, okay, I'm going to get 40,000 to do this work on the CIC. So how is the best way to pay myself? So let's talk about option number one. Option number one is PAYE. So that means that you would pay yourself through a payroll system. You can set that with your accountant, and your accountant will sort out a pay slip with you every month. Your CIC will pay you with a pay, and you'll get a pay slip, and on that pay slip it will say on it, this is your national insurance, this was the tax that was taken off, and it's for the CIC to pay that tax, that national insurance first, and then it gives you your pay packet, which goes into your personal account. Okay, that's your income. And it would also, in that instance, have to pay employers' national insurance. Now, this is a really, really important point. Most grant funders do not pay for employers' national insurance. So you could get yourself into a lot of bother if you are doing short, especially if you're doing short, small projects where you're being hired as a sessional worker, which means it's just a temporary thing, that you're doing like a year's project or whatever, or doing a bit of work. You don't want to be paying employers' national insurance, because that's a lot of money, employers' national insurance extra. It's not going to be on the grant fund budget. So if you don't pay it, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And even if you were to get it on the grant funded budget, the grant funders wouldn't really like it. And also it's a lot of money out of the budget to have to go on tax that isn't going to the project. So overall, it's not a good idea, especially if you're doing sessional work on smaller grant projects. The only time I would say that I would recommend it is if you have got a larger pot of money. Say you've been paid by the National Lottery or Children Need or something, and you've been paid, your CIC's been paid like $250,000. You've been hired as a salary on a salary job for, say, you're going to be getting paid like $50,000 for a year as a permanent position. Then absolutely do that through PAYE and make sure that on that budget it included the employer's national insurance for all the staff hired. So when you're dealing with large projects with large budgets over several of years and you're hired as a salary job permanently, absolutely PAYE, that's fine, okay? But for the vast majority of CICs, you're getting 10,000 for a project here, 20,000 there, maybe 30,000 there. And it's a lot more fluid, and it's not permanent, and you're being hired as a sessional worker. And often that is what's written on your budgets when you put those applications in. So it's what the grant funders are expecting, and the grant funders are not expecting, and you are not accounting for any employer's national insurance. So this brings me on to the next two options you've got for paying yourself, which are fairly similar. So with the example of you being hired as a sessional worker for a project that say is going to last like 9 months, you're being paid maybe you're going to get paid 10,000, say, just an example. So you're going to get paid 10,000. How are you going to get that 10,000 to yourself if you're not going to do it through a payroll? You would invoice your CIC for the work that you are doing as a sessional worker, okay? So you'd invoice your CIC. Now you've got a couple of options there. You could either invoice them and set yourself up as self-employed, or you could set up an LTD business and invoice them from the LTD as a sole trader, okay? Now, this is one crucial point to be in line with tax laws. This is very important for tax law purposes, okay? So remember this. Your self-employed business or your LTD, if you are going to do it this way, it can't only have invoices from the CIC, because that would look like tax avoidance and that's against the rules, okay? So you would need to have some other income coming in to your self-employed business, okay? Now that doesn't have to be a lot of income. It could be as much as just 1 or 2 other invoices from another place. It could be that you're just selling a few things online. Maybe you're doing some private sessions. Maybe you're getting paid to do some private workshops as an artist or a counsellor or whatever it is that your specialism is in. So you would need to have some other income coming into that self-employed business, okay? So providing you've got that, which most of you have, then it's all good. You literally just have to write up the invoice. You make sure you keep that on file. Your accountant needs it. Your CIC will need it. Your grant funders all need it. So you just write up an invoice. You pay yourself over. Now, with grant budgets, I don't recommend that you invoice and pay yourself in one lump sum at the beginning. I recommend that you do a good 2 or 3 invoices and you break the payments up. A grant funder doesn't like it if they see that you've paid yourself all the money up front straight away. Looks a bit dodgy. So you should probably pay yourself one bit up front just so you can get going, maybe a mid payment and then an end payment. It just looks much better and a lot more professional for the funder. And you should do that with all your other staff as well. You don't really want to be paying people up front, because what if you pay them up front and then they disappear and then they don't do the project, and that happens to people. So yeah, so sometimes it's worth definitely hanging back on paying those invoices. So that is it in a nutshell. So let's move on to how you would avoid some tax. So by paying yourself through self-employment or through an LTD, you've already avoided the employer's national insurance. That's great. So we've already avoided that by doing that model. So what else could you do? And what are the benefits of being self-employed versus having an LTD? Okay, so let's think about this. First of all, I would always recommend that you get an accountant for everything to do with this kind of thing. You always get an accountant, have a chat with them about what can be expensed. So you can put your expenses through your self-employed account, whether it be your self-employed or your LTD. That's things like travel, that's things like any kind of work materials. You could even put things like phone costs, all kinds of things, so really think about what you can put through your parking as well, going for coffee meetings, all that kind of stuff. It really does add up. Now, let's talk about a couple of the perks for either or. So let's talk about self-employment first. One perk of being self-employed is if you work from home and you have got a dedicated space at home. So me here, I've got an art space. I've got, me and Nick have got 2 art spaces, because we've got the garden room and we've got the utility and the old garage, all converted. So there's 2 art rooms, plus I've got an office, okay? So this means that I can reduce my utility costs and my council tax and the interest on my mortgage by the percentage of rooms that I'm using for business as opposed to the rooms that I'm not using. So for me, that's 40%. So that means I can claim back 40% of the interest on my mortgage, which is loads, and council tax and utilities. So that's a massive amount that I can claim back. So that I can claim back almost like, as like a monthly payment. You pay the expenses back to you. Same with mileage as well. We always claim back our mileage, and also some car costs as well. So if you were to get a van, for instance, that's 100% tax deductible. So vans, and even if you've got a car but you're using it for a percentage of the time for business, you can claim that percentage back. So self-employed is kind of good for that kind of thing, okay? Now, if you are in LTD, you can't do the room thing, okay? That's what I've been told. You can it works differently if you are an LTD. However, one of the benefits of being an LTD is you can pay yourself in dividends. So this is a really good idea to pay yourself the tax-free allowance, which is it's just over 12,500 a year that we all get as our like base rate. So you pay yourself that, so that's about £1,000 a month. So you pay yourself that through PAYE through your LTD, and then the rest of the money, say another 2,000-3,000, you could pay yourself as a dividend. And with that dividend, you wouldn't pay any national insurance, no employer's national insurance, and you'd only pay 8.75% in dividends tax on that amount. So that's loads and loads less than if you were going to be self-employed and you took the, you obviously had to pay all of the national insurance and the income tax, which is 20% or whatever. So that's definitely a factor to think about. So now if you're in a couple and you're both doing this, one thing that me and Nick do to balance it out is he's self-employed and I do the dividends side of it. So I'm employed by my LTD and he is self-employed. So that means that we're able to benefit from both of those models. So we're able to reduce the home bills by 40%. We also pay ourselves with dividends. So that works out well for us. We're quite happy doing that. And that definitely reduces our tax bill. We're still paying our fair share of tax because remember, with every dividend, the LTD would have to put aside 19% for corporation tax. So that's what we put aside in the LTD, so that does have to be paid. But all in all, it still works out far less tax than if you were to be, say, employed in a job and being paying the full whack. So I hope that helps, just gives you a few ideas on how to reduce your tax bill and also how to pay yourself through your CIC. Now, do be aware of those people out there who'll moan and say, no, you've got to do it through PAYE. Remember, that's not suitable for you if you are working as a sessional worker on small budgets where there isn't a lot of scope for the extra tax of employers' national insurance. That's not suitable. So don't let someone tell you you have to do it like that when you don't. Literally, as I said, HMRC, I've worked with them and they've approved all of my taxes for over 11 years. My accountant does it like that with me and multiple other CICs. I work with hundreds of CICs that all do the same. So 100%, this is absolutely accurate information approved by HMRC. And if you don't believe them, phone HMRC. But don't always take the word of every accountant because they don't all have your best interests at heart. And sometimes they do that because that's just how they've done it for a long time. And they can be quite stuck in their ways.